Okay, so how many times have you guys, by the way, I do have
5 to 7.
I think it's about 5 to 7 minutes, yes. How many of you have ever been to a presentation where the person, master of ceremony, somebody was actually presenting somebody to come to the podium to speak, and they didn't give any clue as to who that speaker, what that speaker was going to say, or why that speaker was even there. And as an audience member, you felt a little bit confused, and it took you a while maybe to try to figure out, okay, why is this person here? Why is this person talking to me? What are they presenting? And it took you a little bit of time before you actually, once that speaker started speaking and maybe a few minutes in, it took you some time to figure out what that person was doing. So it was a little bit awkward, even for the speaker, I'm sure, not to be properly introduced. So I would say that introducing a speaker is probably one of the most important aspects of speaking. Patty will probably identify that, what her topic is on. She's going to say that that's probably the most important thing to do. But there are a lot of very important things to do as speakers, as communicators. You want to make sure that when you're presenting somebody to give a speech, that you make them feel comfortable and that you make the audience feel like they are with you. Okay, so the person that's coming up to speak has something important to say. You want to make sure that you give that person identify their credentials, why they're there, why they are able to give the speech that they're going to give. And you also want to make sure that you inform the audience about the topic that that person is going to talk about. I do have some handouts because I think it's important to, I'll just hand some of these back here, have a takeaway from speeches. So I have,
Thank you.
I have 5 of them here. So there's 3 things. Did you guys ever talk about the power of 3 yet? Okay, so the power of 3 is, if you're up giving a speech, a lot of times if you remember things as a third, 3 things in a row, then it's easier to remember what you're saying. So there's 3 things that are the reason why it's important to make introductions. A smooth transition. In fact, when I was at the Toastmaster convention a couple weeks ago, the keynote speaker, Ed Tate, he was our keynote speaker. He was presented in he had a very good introduction to his speech before he came up. When he came up, he said, "Oh, thank you so much for that great introduction." And he asked the audience, "Wasn't that a great introduction?" Everybody agreed with him, applauded. And he goes, "By the way, I wrote that introduction." So it's very important. I think speakers, especially speakers that have been doing it a while, seasoned speakers, actually know the importance of a good introduction, and they'll actually provide their own introduction to make sure that it's done properly. So it's good to have a good introduction to make a smooth transition. A lot of times when you're, especially in a Toastmaster setting, you have other segments of the Toastmaster meeting where you're talking about table topics, you're talking about, word of the day, there's other various things that you're doing. So when you introduce a speaker, it's kind of like a transition. You're transitioning to a new topic, you're transitioning to a new speaker. So it's a way to transition and to create a proper mindset. So it sets the tone. The introducer actually sets the tone of the whole meeting. So if you're called on to be a master of ceremonies or a Toastmaster at a meeting, you're in a way setting the tone of the meeting. So it's important to make sure that your introductions are very smooth and you create that proper mindset and you give the speaker the proper authority. So you identify their credentials and say why they're there. There's 3 general essential elements to an introduction. You want to make sure that you identify the speaker's name. You want to make sure you talk about their topic. Okay, a little bit about the topic that they're going to talk about, and also their speech style. For Toastmasters, there's even, again, the value of the power of three there. There's three things that you want to remember as a Toastmaster, that you identify what their speech assignment is, their speech objective, and the delivery time, so how long it's going to take for them to deliver the speech that they're giving. As far as drafting the introduction, it's very important to meet with the person that's going to be speaking. Okay, to do some preparation, just like in your prepared speeches, it's also important to do some preparation when you're given an introduction. So you want to talk to the speaker a little bit and find out what it is they're going to be talking about, maybe what they would like you to present to introduce them. So it's important to have that conversation. It's not just an introduction, you leave that up to somebody else as a speaker. You need to be available to the person that's going to be introducing you, to the Toastmaster typically, so that they understand how to properly introduce you. I told you about some of the do's. There's also some don'ts. So under applying restraint, you don't want to upstage the speaker. So you don't want to steal their thunder. You don't want to give the punchline. If they're out giving a speech, you don't want to take away from the speech that they're going to give. You want to make the audience feel comfortable. You want to make the speaker feel comfortable so that it's a good experience. You don't want to surprise the speaker. I remember one time I got up, the person was always giving humorous speeches. The title of his speech was something about dead babies. So I thought, oh, he's going to give us the dead baby speech. No, and so when I introduced him, I introduced it as a humorous topic, and I was very embarrassed, actually, when he actually came up and started talking about some of the dead babies that are a result of the AIDS episode in Africa. So you want to be very careful that you don't misrepresent what the speaker's intention is. That was very embarrassing for me. It was uncomfortable, I'm sure, for the audience, and it definitely probably took the speaker by surprise also, that I was making a joke of something that was so serious. You don't want to rely on cliches, and you want to mention the speaker's name a couple times throughout your introduction. Don't just wait until the very end to introduce those. As far as etiquette on the podium, you want to speak to the audience, so all the things that you've learned in speaking for prepared speeches, you want to apply when you're given an introduction to. You want to look the audience members in the eye. You want to use inflection in your voice. And as John was mentioning earlier, you want to shake the hands of the person that is doing this speech, and then show interest throughout. The other thing that you want to make sure you do is at the end of their speech, so you're not done after you introduce them, when they're finished giving their speech, you want to make sure, continue that comfortable feeling. So you want to make sure that the person, you recognize that person's contribution to the rest of the audience. Give them some maybe words of appreciation. So there's some points there that are identified under introductions that are only at the beginning that you can use to summarize what that person has said, or to maybe show how that speech helped or enlightened the audience. You want to give some points for that. So in conclusion, I think in order to enhance the speaking engagement, you want to make sure that you give proper introductions, and it will help make the, I guess, Toastmaster and speaking experience much better. Thank you.
Now, Shirley had to give a talk from the Better Speaker series on creating good introductions, and I thought she did a very good job about this. I thought the highlight really was you had so many good points, and you were able to summarize them in the take-home sheet. So you had a good take-home message, which is fantastic, because that's really what we want to accomplish from this speech. Now, I could go through all the many things that were good, but I thought it was good that you mentioned the power of threes. That's something we hadn't talked about yet, and I think that applies beyond introductions, so I was happy you did that. I thought you had great eye contact. You were looking around the room, and especially at Speechcrafters, for who this is for. For something to improve upon, one of the things I thought was good for talking to the Speechcrafters is you were right up in front of them. However, there were a few of us on the other side that you weren't speaking to as much, even though you would look over and make the eye contact. You were right in Charlie's hip pocket, practically. I'm sure he doesn't mind, but that might be something that you want to work on. You can still connect with them, I think, and be more centered or move around some more, too. I thought you had a very good conversational tone. I thought the stories were very good, talking about Ed Tate, the dead babies introduction, so people can personalize with when you give a bad introduction and a good one, and also some of the behind the scenes things. So if you want to have a good introduction, you might want to write one and give it to the introducer. Now they might take some liberties with it, but like I did with Shirley's introduction, but those are all good points to take home. Overall, I thought it was a great topic. I thought it was a great educational presentation, and I look forward to them in the future. Thank you, Shirley.